Oh man, you're back in the studio.
I am. I'm back to life. It was 12 days in bed. Lots of doom scrolling. Very bored.
Yeah.
But I just it was so much fatigue too that I wasn't even able to be all that productive with that time. It was kind of a bummer. But then the first day I left bed, I played in a volleyball tournament. It was a twos tournament, and we did the best we've ever done.
Nice.
Yes, we
Cleared
won
the
more,
mechanism.
Yeah, we won more games than we've lost it. We've never done that before. We lost in the semifinals, so we were pretty thrilled about that.
Damn.
And I was still sick too, so we feel like we have a good shot in the next one.
Well, what the hell did you do, Heaton?
I did a lot of volleyball and doom scrolling. Yeah, that's my regular thing. Yeah.
What did you actually? You'd be good at volleyball. You're so tall.
Thank you.
Like if you tried sports ever.
Have you ever tried volleyball, Heaton?
I think maybe in college I did at one point or something. But no, I've been doing a lot of karaoke lately, like once or twice a week.
That's like the volleyball of things for theater kids.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That is 100% it. Yeah. Oh,
are you sticking with the classic songs? Like your Creep, Wagon Wheel?
I am. Thank you. I am, Jen. However, I feel like I need to keep growing. So I'm trying to expand my repertoire. I wanted to sing This Year by the Mountain Goats on Monday, but they didn't have it. And then I went, well, I'll do maybe I'll do some John Denver
for that
but
one.
I'm not going to do Country Road. I'll do Blow Up Your TV, but they didn't have that one either. So it's like they're, you know what the people want? They want me to do the old classics. So
yeah, nobody wants hipster karaoke.
No, it's so annoying when you don't know the song.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got.
I got some new bangers. The
The
next time that we do karaoke, I got some new bangers because I've been singing songs to Bella, and so now I just know the lyrics cold because I've had to sing them 50,000 times. But I'm bringing
Baby Shark
heat next time. No, I got
Wheels on the Bus.
I got In the Jailhouse Now from Oh Brother
nice.
Where Art Thou.
Oh nice.
I got my yodel down. It's going to be awesome.
Nice.
And then Swinging on a Star by Bing Crosby, which is just a stellar diss track to Animals. Like, it's got this beautiful, like 50s, 60s kind of chorus of like, would you like to swing on a star? Bring moonbeams home in a jar. And then it's just, all of the verses are just him like, or would you rather be a mule? And then he just talks shit about mules for the entire verse. It's like a mule, a pig, and a fish. Like, you've never heard such just random slander to these animals. And I love it so much. So anyway, I know all the lyrics to that now.
So Baby Bella isn't getting Barney songs.
She's a little young for, that. I don't know.
You want to start out on Bing Crosby before you go to Barney is what Dr. Spock says.
Well, my cousin just decided that she didn't like those kids' songs, and so her kid would just not have them in her life, and it was actually wonderful, and her kid is the absolute coolest. Yeah, so I'm all for it.
I'm not going to really push for any of that until there's a video component that also shuts her up. Like now this is really like I'm singing to her so she will calm down when she is yelling when she's fighting a nap. That's when I'll break out the songs. That, and also for whatever reason, I'm just raising an Oh Brother Where Art Thou child, but like I don't know all the lyrics to Big Rock Candy Mountain, but I will read the lyrics.
I can play that on my ukulele.
Mountain. Can you?
Yeah.
Oh man, we got to do it the next live show.
I will bring my ukulele next time I'm in Austin, and we could do it. We could do a
Have you
duo
ever heard
of
Big Rock Candy Mountain?
Probably, but
it's like basically, you know how like rap songs
it's
are
like the anthem of the Great Depression.
Like, you know how like rap songs are like, oh, I got a lot of money and I've ridden on a private jet and, I fucked all these women. It's like that for hobos.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like all the shit that hobos love to do the most. It's like, it's just like this very braggadocious, amazing song about like how awesome it is to be a hobo in this fantasy hobo world.
Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing it.
It's amusingly ironic where it's like somebody dreaming really big and they're like, oh yeah, like on Big Rock Candy Mountain, I'd only have to work 4 hours, like that kind of thing. Like they're like, it's
the handouts grow on trees.
The handouts grow on trees. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Democrat anthem.
Oh shit.
She went there.
Jen's auditioning for the Dan Bongino time slot now that he's joined the FBI.
Yeah. There's an opening.
Heaton, we have a big announcement.
We do. Shall I jump in?
Please.
World, it is time that you know that on May 1st, the Western Boone Junior Senior High School will be doing a musical performance that will include 40 Omatones purchased by myself and Justin Robert Young.
Oh my God, you guys.
I reached out to the musical director, Leslie. We had a good chat. I was very excited. I talked to her before Christmas and was like, hey, I'm thinking about donating some Omatones to your school. I think it'd be kind of funny. Like, your husband listened to the show. He thought it would be great. So like, how many students do you have? What would be the minimum? What would be the maximum? And she was really cool. She's like, well, like, we don't want to put you out. Probably if you wanted to just send 4, that would be amazing. We could do a quartet. I mean, we have 40 students. I wouldn't expect you to do that. And I was like, this is in my head. I'd cover 20 of these. That would be pretty funny.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd cover a full 40, but I bet my good friend Justin Robert Young would. And it turns out Justin also thinks this is pretty funny. So Justin's purchased 20 of them. So there should have been a stupid amount of Amazon boxes that arrived at Western Boone Junior Senior High School last week. And I did get confirmation, by the way, that at least the first 20 had arrived. And they will be learning to play Omatone in preparation for their May 1st concert. So if you are in the Western Boone area, you should definitely come to that on May 1st. Because I think Justin and I are both planning to go out there for that. I might wear a tux. I'm going to treat it like the gala.
Yeah.
I still don't know what this instrument is.
All right, we'll play a clip of a popular song being covered by an Otamatone here.
Wow.
All right, so there we go. That is that is the Otamatone and sorry, that is Western Boone Junior Senior High School.
Yep, their May 1st recital or musical, I think concert. That's right, May 1st. I guess it's the spring concert for Western Boone Junior Senior High School. May 1st. Yeah.
All right, so here's what we need for any and all Indianapolis or adjacent listeners. We need any and all local media. We will be reaching out to let them know this is a great local media story. We want coverage of this. We want reporters there. This is the closest that Heaton and I will get to a Music Man situation. But don't worry, the instruments are real. The instruments are real this time.
You're right. I got to dress like the Music Man. I hadn't even thought about that. You're right.
You do.
Oh, this is great. I'm Harold Hill.
You are.
I assume we'll be filming this.
Someone better be.
Well, I want to see it.
And then, everybody, we want to sell this joint out. I mean, I don't know what the recitals normally do in terms of attendance, but we're going to pack this bitch.
Yeah. I'm Harold Hill, but Justin is Mr. Holland from Mr. Holland's Opus. And we want to make this a special night for everybody.
We do. Does he die?
No, he just has a nice crowning achievement moment where everybody from the film comes back to give him a send-off.
Hey, he just has an opus.
You die from AIDS at age 90, as previously discussed.
Fuck, yeah, you're right. I've already been marked. I've been marked by the death clock. From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
And I'm Jen Briney, back in studio.
And from Washington, D.C.,
I'm Andrew Heaton.
And we're not wrong. On this edition of the program, we will talk about Elon Musk asking for 5 things that federal employees did last week. And we will talk about the Pope being in critical condition and what that role means in our modern world, along with your emails on the show. We had some spirited emails on the show that we will go through.
Were all of them from Eric Adams? I know he listens to this and writes in regularly.
He might be my favorite politician now.
Why?
Because he is in free fall. He is struggling to save his political life. His greatest achievement is something that would be unfathomable to brag about in the Democratic Party a year ago, which is that he stood up to the Biden administration and is working to curb immigration in New York City. And yet that is like by far the most popular thing that he has done by the polling. So now he has to run on that. Also, Cuomo is running. They are both going for the black population of New York City because Cuomo polls well with black New Yorkers. Eric Adams polls well with black New Yorkers. So today, Eric Adams had a meeting, talked about the Negroes that were trying to crucify him.
Nope. My God.
Which I'm like, oh, if we're going to get that out of pocket, like this election is going to be awesome. He's going to hard R Cuomo and it's going to be amazing.
This is going to be so awful.
So that election now is awesome. And he is off the rails and I'm here for every second of it.
Yeah. The host of Politics is really enjoying.
Well, look, you have to understand, this is some years you have feast, some years you have famine on the 4-year lunar cycle of politics, right? And this by far is the famine year. We have one off year where there's no midterms. There's no like building up to the primaries or anything. I got 2 meals to eat the entire year. The New York City Democratic primary, the mayoral primary, and then the governor's races in Virginia and New Jersey. Slim fucking pickings.
Yeah, that's
all right.
true.
So if Eric Adams is going to fucking just kamikaze into Andrew Cuomo and Andrew Cuomo is going to try to resuscitate his career, because by the way, the last time that Andrew Cuomo was on a big political stage, it was him telling his constituents as a way to explain away sexual harassment, a deluge of sexual harassment claims. I'm not perverted. I'm just Italian. That was the last thing he said. And then he disappeared into the ether and now he's back.
Oh.
You've got some characters to cover.
Normally, Justin, I want America to move away from racialized thinking and identitarian politics, but this sounds super fun.
Well, there's no way you can get around that in New York City. That is just the way that they go. And Heaton, I can get you interested. Ranked choice voting election.
Oh, I know.
And so there might there might be alliances. Last time there were alliances that started to be formed between some of the mayoral candidates. So it's going to be weird. It's going to be super.
When's the election?
When is that election?
Okay.
June is the primary, but all the candidates have to lock in. They have to prove that they have been collecting signatures by yesterday. So now the campaigns are kind of beginning in earnest.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, June, that's a lot of content for you for months.
If it gets weird, yeah.
If
otherwise it's going to like
we're already there.
Normally it's just a bunch of bureaucrats saying like with thick accents saying like, I'm going to clean up the subway. It's about time New Yorkers like, and that's boring. Yeah. Nobody cares about that. But if it's going to be Eric Adams dropping the N-word, then I'm like, lock in, dude.
My all-time favorite New York election, though, was the Staten Island congressional election of 2014, I think, where the Republican incumbent, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he threatened to throw a journalist off of the rotunda. Like he threatened to, he'd been indicted and I think convicted for embezzling funds at a restaurant, like is a criminal. And then the Democrats, they nominated against this woefully awful Republican candidate, they came up with a man that I think might be illiterate, like a illiterate union guy. I don't think that normally about union people, but in this case, he is like the prototypical like union dude. And like, so people would ask him questions about like, well, how do you feel about protectionism? And he would like stare into the camera for 5 seconds and go, excuse me. And then he would walk away and then come back and go, yes, I think that the protection.
Oh, jeez, Louise.
Exit stage left, talk to his campaign people. And like, yo, you do like that. And you were like, okay, yeah, I'm in favor of it. They during the debate that they had, they asked them like, what is your favorite book? That's it. No, it wasn't even that. What is a book you've read in the last year? And both of them just blinked really hard. And then, like the moderator was like, the Bible, maybe? And like neither of them could think of a book. No. It was great. It was really funny.
Who won?
I think the Republican won. Do you recall, Justin?
This is what year? Last year?
2014?
2014 or 2024?
He said 2014.
I do not remember who won the congressional seat in Staten Island in 2014. Wait, hold on. That is as a large language model. I spent on Great Night last night trying to see whether or not DeepSeek would write fan fiction about Mao. I wanted to see whether or not they would write fan fiction about how during the Cultural Revolution, Mao was really just interested in writing a slip and slide. It would not.
It wouldn't do it.
No,
I bet ChatGPT will.
Oh, ChatGPT.
Wait, hold on. The guy I'm thinking of is Michael Grimm. Great name, Republican congressman from Staten Island, represented the 11th district, the fighting 11th. From 2011 to 2015, he resigned from Congress after pleading guilty to tax evasion and fraud related to a health food restaurant that he owned. He served 8 months in federal prison and then attempted a political comeback in 2018, but he lost the Republican primary.
Oh, no.
The balls on these people.
Oh, no. But speaking of the balls on these people, George Santos did a podcast with comedian Jim Norton
I saw some of that.
Me.
Yeah.
I have not listened to it yet, but I did see the clip where he said the stinkiest member of Congress was Jerry Nadler. And just by the looks of it, I totally buy it.
I believe it too. When I saw Nadler in person, first of all, he's miniature. He's like a teeny tiny bowling ball.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we walked by him at the DNC, and his head probably comes up to my chest.
Really?
He's tiny. Yeah, he's
that wide then.
Yes, he is that. Like, he is the roundest human being I think I've ever seen.
Because he looks like Dr. Robotnik from the Sonic the Hedgehog.
I mean,
like he's got a very, very round shape.
He does. And I just kind of expected, he goes head to head against Trump. I just kind of always pictured him as like a big round guy. No, like tiny guy. And he did kind of just, he looked like he stinks.
Yeah.
So I believe it.
Yeah. Anyway, well, I don't know. Maybe we'll get to that at some point.
I mean, I'm glad George Santos is out of office, obviously, for all the reasons, but he's such a gossip that just sounds like a great podcast. Even if the stuff he says isn't true, I don't really care.
I mean, yeah, but the stuff that Jim Norton's interested in is not stuff that like
it's not
he
serious.
would probably even lie about. It would
he
just
asks
be like,
who stinks.
Yeah, exactly. Who smells the worst?
Yeah. Like this is what George Santos is for. And I kind of wish that they would put him in the White House press corps. So
based on what happened yesterday, the White House Correspondents Association now no longer determining so they're not the Correspondents Association determined the seating and the organization of the pools. The White House always determined who got access.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not quite, I think, the end of journalism like some were portraying it yesterday.
Yeah.
But
I don't understand the hysterics over it. I mean, of course, the White House gets to decide who's at the White House.
Well, and this was all because of the AP lawsuit.
Yeah, because they won't call it the Gulf of America.
Yeah. Are you familiar with this, Eden? The fight with yeah.
It's so dumb.
So this is where, as I recall, day one or day two, Trump decided to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America so that a bunch of fucks whose ego is tied to flag would get to think that America won some meaningless battle. And
we don't know whether or not it was also. Yeah, we don't know if it was also to circumvent last minute Biden EPA.
The why
rulings.
is unclear.
The why is unclear. The how is done. It is the Gulf of America. It has been
like
recognized.
officially,
Listen,
I don't understand.
If
How
I'm
is it
gonna
allowed?
if I'm gonna keep calling Twitter, like I'm not gonna fucking call it X. Like you don't get to claim a letter. Fuck off. It's Twitter. I'm not gonna call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. I'm 41. I'm not relearning this body of water. No,
That's fine. Now, you don't run the AP style book. Are you
Not
familiar
now.
with the AP style book?
I'm aware of it. I haven't read it front to cover in a while.
Nobody needs to read it.
You don't read it.
Nobody needs to read it. The AP style book, for people who are not aware, is somewhat of a Bible for people that run media agencies, written word media agencies, previously newspapers specifically, in that it is just the way that you refer to certain things. So you can keep a consistent tone throughout your entire organization. Everybody can say, oh, how do we refer to blank? And then specifically your copy editors could say, oh, well, we refer to the White House as capital T, capital W, capital H, whatever it is, right? The AP style book has become slightly more controversial over the last, I would say, 8 years. They have made certain decisions that were seen as not necessarily there for clarity, but there for a more a progressive worldview. One of the more controversial ones was they changed nobody should refer to a mistress, because a mistress is denigrating to the woman, and instead it should
What am I supposed to call her? My side
Yeah.
slam? That's even more offensive. I'm not going to call her my side slam. I like her.
Yeah, what's the other word you could use for that?
I
Mistress
forget
is
what
a perfectly respectable position.
Well, see,
See
this-
Exhibit A, Nation of France.
So this
Like side piece is what I usually say, but I don't think that's like official.
No, mistress sounds nicer.
Somebody brought that up and I was like, oh, wow. Like I forgot about that. And then I looked and it showed me my response to it when it was an actual thing. And it's like, got it. Side dick on first reference.
Yeah.
So this has been a bugaboo, especially for conservatives, for a little while. Then the Gulf of America thing happens. And they're like, hey, change the AP style book to refer to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. They say no. And so initially, the Trump team is like, okay, cool. Well, you don't get automatic access to the Oval Office, and you don't get automatic access to the Air Force One, which is something that they had kind of been birthed into. Because in
It's
a
a
bygone
norm
era
thing. The norm is they get it.
And also it's like in a bygone era when the vast majority of people only read a newspaper, then that was really important for there to be AP copy on that. I don't know how important it is now, but still. So the AP sues and they say, you can't bar us from these things. And the judge comes back and says, well, as long as the White House press corps or the White House is agreeing that the White House Correspondents Association is making these determinations, we don't know why they're ceding that to a private institution. But as long as they are doing that, then the AP has a case. If the White House decided that they were going to stop cooperating with this private institution, then the AP would not have a case, which led to yesterday where they were like, by the way, we don't play ball with the White House Correspondents Association anymore. And that was the news.
I also just don't know how important this is because all of these press conferences are televised.
Yes.
You don't really learn much from them in my experience. Like I don't aspire to be one of the people in the room. So that's why when I was asked, Trump is going to allow some podcasters in the room, are you going to try and go for it? Like, no, because I don't really know what I would get from it.
I applied.
It's kind of where I wound up, Jen. I mean, I live here and I thought about it and I was like, I don't cover this on my show. I don't like if I'm allowed to you
wouldn't want to open source a question and then just ask the question that your audience wanted to know about?
Of the press, no, they spin. I'm sitting there
but
absorbing the spin.
You could ask them something that they would not have to spin about.
Maybe. I mean, Matt Lee does a good job with that, but I feel like you can cover the news without covering the spin of the press secretary.
You are right that the the role of the press secretary in our modern era is far more how will they lie about this than how can I get information about it.
I feel like if you're covering a story, go and find the primary sources as opposed to sitting there and waiting for the spin. So, I mean, you can still get the story. In fact, you might do a better job because you're asking the people that are a part of the story as opposed to the spin masters.
Well, the other side of it that doesn't get shown is that the press secretary coordinates with reporters to leak stuff.
Yeah.
And like that is something that there's a lot of off the record briefings or on background briefings. So reporters know more than they are letting on. Like it is a friendly way that the White House in any administration does coordinate with reporters. Obviously, it's more friendly in a Democratic administration, as we saw the last 4 years, where there was obvious stories that were plentiful that were not covered, as opposed to now when we get a lot of coverage on things.
I know that's a real dynamic. I do think that's part of the way that you end up with a DC press corps that isn't trusted because they look more like stenographers than they do investigative reporters, because they are saying like, these are these off the record inside information that they have that they can't fact check, don't fact check. And so I don't think that's necessarily a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that the institution has problems. And by institution, I mean DC media.
Yeah.
DC media has major problems, as we saw with the Washington Post. The Washington Post, did you see this Bezos thing?
The opinion. Yeah. Fill people in on this. This is wild.
Well, I'll tell you what I did. I read it and my first thought was to text Heaton.
My first text message this morning was from Justin. And my first thought this morning was, fuck, I joined Reason too early. I should have just held out and gone to the Washington Post. They probably pay better.
So yeah, their opinion section, Jeff Bezos said from here on out, the opinion section, not the newsroom, which I do think is an important distinction. The opinion section will not run columns that don't either respect free markets or personal liberties. And that there's going to be an ideological bent to the opinion section, and that in a bygone era where there were media monopolies, there was a responsibility from a local paper to provide a wide variety of opinions. Now that is served by the internet. And so he would rather cultivate a specific direction for the opinion section.
Basically told the opinion writers what opinions they have to have.
Well, he told them if you have opinions that are in opposition to free markets or personal liberties, then your opinions will probably not be run. So you can write them. They just probably won't run them.
It's a distinction without a difference to me.
Sure. But I told Heaton, I'm like, you better you better contact some people. Send a draft.
Sounds like my time to,
because there's a power vacuum that is about to exist at the Washington Post.
The crown of PJ O'Rourke has been laying in a gutter, and I will pick it up with a sword and ride triumphant on a white horse into the Washington Post.
I'm not kidding. I think you could.
Yeah, I think you're a good enough writer.
Yeah. Will you?
Thank you.
We'll see.
I don't know. I'm pretty busy.
I know. He's got 15 projects going on at once.
Yeah. I've got like 2.5 jobs, 3 jobs. I don't know. I don't know that I'm tired to write op-eds.
Jobs,
I'm going to try it.
3 jobs. Act like that's a fucking, come on. Disgusting. These fucking layabouts. You're the Big Rock Candy Mountain, Heaton. Fucking 3 jobs.
Dad over here lobbing bombs.
No. Let's talk about what you did last week. Elon Musk, leading the Department of Government Efficiency, sent an email to all U.S. federal employees demanding that they list 5 accomplishments from the previous week, with non-compliance considered a resignation. This directive, intended to assess productivity, led to widespread confusion and resistance. It also happened over a weekend, I might point out. Agencies such as the FBI, State Department, and Department of Defense advised their staff to pause responses, citing concerns over confidentiality and proper protocol. The Office of Personnel Management later clarified that responding was voluntary, contradicting Musk's initial mandate. Unions, including the American Federation of Government Employees, criticized the move as disrespectful and legally questionable, threatening legal action. Despite the turmoil, over 1 million federal employees, approximately 1/3 of the workforce, did submit reports, likely out of caution. President Trump supported Musk's initiative, emphasizing the need for accountability in government roles. However, the episode did highlight tensions between Musk's aggressive management style and established federal protocols, raising questions about oversight, employee rights, and the balance of power within the federal government. Jen, list 5 things you did last week. No confidential information.
I saw this question on here and I actually answered it in my head because I was sick last week. And yet I still managed to record We're Not Wrong, recorded my Lake and Riley Act episode, recorded This Week in Congress, listened to a hearing about Greenland, which will be a Congressional Dish episode. And and I got my business license for Congressional Dish, which had expired 3 years ago and I didn't know. So
there we go.
Yeah, I did a lot of shit in a week. But the thing is that like if I were to send out that email, none of that is classified.
No.
So that was the most amazing part of this email to me, where it was like, you're sending this out to the entire government. There's a lot of these people that can't tell you what you do. And if you're sending this to this random email, which we're pretty sure is not a classified situation, you're basically giving anyone that can hack that email a roadmap to like, this is how our government works. It's just such a short-sighted, stupid idea that, Elon Musk had this reputation as a genius, which I never fully bought into, but now I think he's actually a stupid person. And I'm really enjoying seeing the cabinet secretaries standing up for their power, at least, and being like, nah, you should ignore this email. This is not something you have to follow. I think 6 of them at this point have said no.
DNI, CIA,
USDA.
State Department. They were all like, by the way, don't.
Yeah, just don't respond to this.
Don't worry about it. Trump yesterday, I heard, I was doing a spot on Sky Arabia and they just cut to, as soon as I was done, they cut to Trump live doing one of his impromptu press conferences in the Oval Office. And his response was, do you have any clarification on OPM saying that these are voluntary? And he's like, well, that they're semi-voluntary in that if you don't respond, you're fired.
It's just ridiculous.
I like semi-voluntary as a concept. It's semi-voluntary. Yeah, it's semi-voluntary.
If you don't respond, you're fired. Heaton, 5 things. Go. You're fired if you don't tell me 5 things you did last week.
I'm sorry, for national security purposes, I can't reveal anything I did last week, but I'll tell you it was really important, and I frankly can't do them well enough without additional funding. So that you should know that. Here's my okay. When we're looking at stories like this, I try to come up with different filters to look at them through to try to figure out what's going on. So filter 1 is good faith argument in favor of the person doing it. So before I descend into my Elon analysis, which is not necessarily good faith, the good faith argument is that Elon Musk is trying to rid the federal government of waste and fraud. According to him, 5 bullet points is not onerous, which I think is fair. And that what they're attempting to do is stress test who's actually checking their email to see who's phoning it in and just collecting a check without working, or is dead. And that is what they're trying to do. Neither of those things. Okay, now I'm done with the positive thing. None of that holds water with me. I don't disagree. I don't think that this is particularly onerous. It's not like they had to fill out like a 30-page paper, but I don't think it is going to actually solve any of the stuff that he's claiming it would solve. Like, I think all federal employees are checking their email right now. I don't think there's anybody that's a federal employee that's like, it's not going to check my email for a few days. Nothing will probably happen. No, they're paying attention. So that's not going to do anything. And as somebody that's been following government waste and fraud for years, there's lots of government waste and fraud. There's actually a lot of dead people that collect Social Security and Medicare. There are dead people collecting checks and that. I've not heard
Save it for Newsmax, Nazi.
Yeah. I've not heard of federal employees collecting checks after death. I don't think that that's a thing. I've never heard that as a thing. And then furthermore, if there's any actual assessment going on, like if anybody's actually going to read through this stuff, where are they? How are they going to do this? So this is what I think is happening.
The email did say to CC your manager, that this was to collect the information to your manager. I think
the best case scenario is this is like a dead man switch where it's trying to see if there are people just literally not showing into where I don't think this is what I think is happening. I think that Elon Musk the filter that I'm rapidly arriving at with Elon Musk is when I put on my hat of, if I was trying to eliminate waste, fraud, and make the government more efficient, would I do this? A lot of the stuff he's doing, no, that is not the direction I would do. If I were trying to maximize lols on Twitter, that it does seem to resonate with that. So I think what Elon Musk is trying to do is he's trying to get federal employees or their spokesmen in federal public unions to say, how dare you force us to justify our job? How dare you? I do not have to tell anybody what I do for work or why I should have my job. I think that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to back end federal employees into saying, I don't owe anybody an explanation for why I'm on the taxpayer
expose
fund.
Arrogance in that class of
I think
of
that's what
employee.
I think that's the point of this. I think that it's a psychological play to try to discredit federal employees in the popular imagination, because most people don't have that luxury. Like I've had multiple jobs where I do have to explain what I did, and I have to explain why it's worth having me. And I think he's trying to trick them into doing that.
I'd add to that too. I think he's also trying to demoralize people. I think he's trying to just have stuff happen over and over again so that people say, fuck it, I'm out. Because they've basically said stuff to that effect, that they want to torture federal workers to the point that they don't want to do the job anymore, which is just such a nasty way to be. I think he's a terrible human being, but I think the motivation.
Well, aside from the psychological tomfoolery going on, this is not. I think the best way to try, like we've had multiple conversations about this, right? Like I don't think if you're going after government waste and you're going after government spending that you want to start with government employees. You want to go with regulations and spending, and government employees are not the biggest problem there. But aside from that, let's say that we want to reduce the fluff in the federal workforce. I'm sure that there is fluff in the federal workforce. You would want to identify what are departments that are superfluous, what are programs that are superfluous. You want to identify what are the things that we have people staffed in and get rid of those things. If you're just trying to get people to self-select to leave, my fear would be that you'd have something like this occur. We're going to give everybody a buyout for 6 months or whatever it is, and then we're going to try to irritate the shit out of you in hopes that you leave. Let's say I am very competent at my job, and I am intelligent, and I've got a lot of I've got a lot of brain power behind me, and I know I can jump from the public sector to the private sector with very little issue. This guy's pissing me off. I think I'm going to leave now. I, the competent person that's in government, I'm going to take that buyout, and I'm going to go get a job in the private sector. I'll get paid more anyway. Fuck you. I'm leaving, right? If I'm worried about my ability to transition into the private sector, or maybe I'm just not a particularly good employee and I'm worried that I won't get a good referral, or I'm going to struggle, I don't know that I'm going to take that. Maybe I'll stick around. So I think that there's a decent chance that part of what will happen is the more competent people will leave. The people that don't feel that they have the ability to transition to the private sector will stay. And then there'll be a bunch of people that are like, I'm just going to stay here because I hate you and I want to undermine you from the inside. So I think this will be particularly
that last
effective.
part is part of what the Trump administration wants to do, is to find people that are maliciously complying or not going through with stuff, and they want to identify them, and those are the people that they want to try to fire for cause, and they want to identify
so
people
that's
that
like
are
this email bit then is
yes.
You could comply with this maliciously. This would be very easy. It's 5 bullet points.
I know. I said on Twitter, just say work. It's very easy. Rihanna already told you how to do it. I think this was Elon going in over his skis. And I think that this was something where, yes, it plays on X. Yes, cat turd loves it, but it's not something that if you really do believe that the cabinet that Trump has put together is something that can take out, that can conduct revolutionary change, which is what they want, that is their remit inside that tent, then saddling them with this shit on a Friday is not conducive to that. That being said, if I will take your point, Heaton, that you were trying to make in good faith, you're not necessarily trying to find dead people, but you are trying to get an accurate head count. If you believe that there is headcount inflation in some of these agencies, and that headcount on some level, like it does in every organization, determines budget, then finding an accurate headcount of email people that may not be dead, right? But just might not be there anymore. Might have transitioned to another department, and they might have two different email accounts with the same thing. If that is part of the way that you determine how many people are at a department, finding those dead emails and running those leads down would be a way to do it. I don't think it was particularly.
It sounds like a lot of emails you're going to have to parse through to that end, though. Do they have the infrastructure necessary to go through some 30,000 emails that they're apt to have received?
They can take that. I mean, what if it was a third of the workforce? So you have 2/3 that you wait. Apparently they extended it a day or something. So you take that and then you divvy it up based on the backside of the emails, and you give it to the department heads and say, hey, are these people still working for you?
Okay.
Like, now, is that what they're going to do? I have no idea. Is this literally just for the lulz? Who knows? But I do think culturally, Heaton, you are dead on that this is something to try to inoculate the American public to say, wait a minute, do we really care about these federal workers? They don't want to go into work. They don't want to respond to their boss. I have to do both those things. Why are they special?
Writing an email it's not indicative of whether or not you do the work. Like, I'm getting really sick of this branding of federal workers as if they're all parasites. They're all lazy. Like, they do really good, important work for us. And I don't understand why this country is turning on them like this and treating them as if they're all just people that are sitting around doing nothing, collecting paychecks. They're all ghost workers. Like, this is such bullshit, because when we actually meet these people in real life, we're appreciative of what they do. Yesterday, I had to go to, this is Texas State, but it's still government worker. This woman with the paperwork I had to fill out, I was nervous going in there. I planned to be there for an hour. I was there for 7 minutes. She knew exactly what had to be done. She asked me for all the documents I needed. Like, she was so efficient. She was so knowledgeable of what she was doing. Like, these people do good work for us. When you go to the national parks, who meets a park ranger and says, fuck off, you're evil? Like, this is so unappreciative of the work that they do. And some of the work is so important for us. Like the FDA, they are making sure that there's not poisons in your food. The people that work at the Department of Energy, these are people that are making sure that our nuclear bombs are secure. And we have noticed that a lot of these layoffs are being now called back because after the fact, they started appreciating these jobs that are being done. So just this idea that federal workers are all lazy, I'm insulted by it. And I'm not even a federal worker. Like, this is just
I don't know if the idea is that they're all lazy.
But that's seems to be the conversation here. Like, give me 5 things that you did, because I'm guessing that you don't have 5 things. I'm guessing that your job isn't justified.
That is an assumption of tone.
That is the assumption of the email.
Is it?
Yes. Tell me 5 things that you did, and if they're not up to my standards, you're fired.
No, it was if you don't respond, you're fired.
Yeah, but what's the purpose of an email like that? You're justifying your job. And so if those 5 points, if you can't say something that impresses Elon Musk, do you also lose your job? Like, if I got an email like that, I wouldn't write back work, because I would assume that on the other side, there's someone reading it and judging it. Yeah. I can understand why a federal worker would get that. It would be very, very nervous about how to respond to that email. If you are doing something that's like kind of classified, like, to justify your job properly, you have to say things that you're not sure if you should say. Hence, you have these executive agency heads saying, don't respond to this. Like, I wouldn't respond to that as a joke just to prove that I exist. That's what HR is for. And by the way, if you're really worried that you have federal workers that don't exist, that's what inspectors general are for. You can order these people who are experts in government, who are experts in these agencies, to go in and actually investigate that. And the first thing Trump did was fire 17 of these experts. So I don't even buy that this entire effort is about waste, fraud, and abuse. I think there's a simplistic way of looking at this government that I know has been a thing my entire life, where it's big government bad, small government good. And this is just slash and burn. They want 200,000 federal workers to quit. The end. And they only find out after the fact the value of some of these people. I think it is that simple.
That is a Silicon Valley. I will say that there is very much a difference in culture between DC and Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, gigantic layoffs where you then hire back people that you have fired, that is very normal. That is like, in fact, it is proving that you are doing the best job of getting to the most efficient. In Silicon Valley, there are two stages. There's growth and then there's efficiency. You grow as fast as possible. You try to capture as much of the market as you possibly can. And then once you feel like you have either hit a saturation point on growth or you've run out of money, you begin to get efficient. And so it's like firing a bunch of people and then finding out that you don't have the password to a thing that runs the website and then hiring that dude back for even double the salary is a positive thing because you have found, okay, that's the outer edge of what we need to do to be the most efficient. Now that is horrifying in the world of government, but it shows you where this current situation is heating.
I largely agree with Jen in terms of the bluntness of what's going on and the lack of strategic thinking in terms of shrinking the government. If we were in a different scenario and let's say a president we all rather liked put Mitch Daniels in charge of auditing the federal government, I think a very reasonable thing to ask would be, is this particular position impactful and a good use of taxpayer money? I'm not really worried about federal employees being lazy. That's not really something I'm worried about. What I do worry about is that government programs don't advise the government to end themselves. It's very, very rare for a government agency to go, we've solved our problem, you should put us out of work. So that's the kind of thing that I'm concerned about is like assessing what are you doing? Is this a good use of taxpayer funding? Is there a way that we can actually assess whether or not this is actually necessary for the government to do? Like an example that comes up periodically in New York City, there's the Historical Landmark Commission. And they identified a bunch of very historical buildings in 1962, I think, when they started. And the commission's still there. They keep finding historical buildings. And that's just because everybody doesn't want to lose their job. It's very understandable. But it also means that government programs accrue a bit like those purchases you get on your credit card if you're not careful. So you do have to go in. You do have to excise things that are no longer necessary or are redundant or are counterproductive and harmful. So if it's just, should we be able to assess, should this position exist? I think that's very, very germane. But I'm not worried about people being lazy. In my experience, people were very concerned with input.
But this alternative universe where they are being careful like that is not the world that we're living in right now. And I think we have to be careful because I had a conversation yesterday with a MAGA in my life who was telling me like the government has so much waste, fraud, and abuse. Like that waste, fraud, and abuse has just become a talking point at this point. And I think the role of government is something that I am so much less worried about the federal government having some extra employees, especially knowing how many of them are veterans. I mean, it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest employers in the United States. I'm not worried about having extra employees if that means that my government is effective. If it means that government, which is the only power large enough with enough power to police things like corporations and big companies, I am more worried about what is in my food, what is in my medicine, what is in my air, what is in my water. Will my planes stay in the air? Like government protects us. And
do we feel like it's been doing a good job?
I don't think doing this is going to help any.
Didn't answer the question.
Do I think it's doing a good job?
It's been doing a good job.
For the most part. I mean, there's ways that can be better, obviously, but I think the point is I want law enforcement. And if that means that it's not efficient, completely efficient, that's okay with me because I am more worried about effectiveness. I'm more worried about the Department of Energy having enough workers to make sure that the nuclear bombs are secure as I am worried about efficiency, which like if you want efficiency, that would mean having as few workers as possible so that you're not paying that much. But like, I want the nuclear bombs secure. I want to have enough food inspectors that they're doing the job well. And right now we don't have enough. We know we don't have enough FAA technicians. We know we don't have enough FAA air traffic controllers. So it's just, there's so many ways in which we don't have enough workers in some of these agencies. So going through all of this with a fine tooth comb, is that what they call it? And like figuring out where in the government there's, where they're not really doing their job well and where they're doing it well, and we should staff them properly. Like that is one thing. That is not what's going on here. This is cuts for the sake of cutting. And I do think it's going to be dangerous for us because we're talking about the only parts of this country, our law enforcement agencies that can police these corporations that have amassed so much power. That's my biggest concern here. And my biggest concern is just, quite frankly, not efficiency, it's effectiveness.
I do not think the government is effective. And I think that that's a big problem right now. I find it abhorrent that we have hundreds of thousands of homeless people in this country. I would gladly pay higher taxes if I actually thought they would fucking help. They don't. The government is not effective. The fact that we're stepping over prone figures on sidewalks in American cities is a moral horror on the American people. And I don't think our government's helping particularly well. I would like to identify where can we put resources that would help people and where are we not using those resources well. I don't think that efficiency, if I may finish, I don't think that efficiency and effectiveness are contrary to one another. I think that they reinforce one another.
But when you say that you don't think government is effective, why? Like, let's go with homelessness. Right now, we have the private sector that's building all of our homes, and they're selling them all at market rate. And so people that don't have enough money aren't able to get into them. What is the power that can do anything about that? Is it the private sector? Is the market taking care of this?
The biggest problem, Jen, is that we don't have enough supply of houses. And that's largely because we've rigged through government the zoning of houses to make it hard to do that. You're not going to deal with homelessness unless you have more houses. You need more houses. So the biggest problem, there's all sorts of problems with homelessness. And there's stuff that I would throw money at from government. Mental health is a big part of that. But the main culprit is government. It's zoning. It's anti-density laws promulgated by the government. It's minimum lot sizes. Los Angeles has like $1.8 billion right now that they can use to build houses. They can't do it because whenever they do it, somebody comes in the neighborhood and uses zoning laws to stop them. So government is the problem there. It's the primary problem there.
No, hold on. Government is what makes the rules. What I'm hearing right now is you don't like the rules. Who's going to change the rules? Or do you want to just get rid of rules and let the private sector do whatever the fuck they want?
I think we have too many rules in terms of building homes.
But should we have rules?
Yes, I'm not an anarchist, Jen. You know this.
I know. So this is my thing. Like to say government's the problem.
The size of rules is not meaningless. It's not how long is a bit of string. Like if the primary problem is these rules are bad, then get rid of those rules. Shrink the regulatory footprint there.
Change the rules, not get rid of rules, not get rid of government.
I don't think anybody is saying that.
Well, so I don't know. I actually think people are. I think the people that are cheering on this slashing and burning of government are saying things like government is the problem. Government is bad. Therefore, get rid of government and things will get better. I think it is that simplistic. But when you take it down, when you break it down, it's like the problem with zoning is not that there are zoning laws, because zoning laws also protect your neighborhood from having oil drilling happening in your backyard. So it's like the solution is not get rid of all laws and let anyone do whatever the hell they want. It's to change the laws and make them more effective, which means you still need government. You just need that government to do effective things.
I understand that. I think that you're kind of making a straw anarchist argument.
But look at what is happening.
We can agree or disagree on the way that Elon Musk is handling this stuff, but I don't know if it is. I mean, it is your opinion to say that this is a cruelty is the point, massive firing for the sake of firing. We'll see what the result is. I don't know if they have not said that. That has not been their point. Their point is to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. And obviously you think that's bullshit. I think many people think that's bullshit. Heaton sounds like he thinks it's bullshit, but we can't totally prescribe motivations to what they are doing beyond what they are at least saying they are doing.
I don't know. I think for 40 years, we've been told that government is bad. Government is the problem. And now we have an administration that is setting it on fire.
There are certainly people that say that. And there's certainly an element of this country that voted for Donald Trump because he would make massive change. I think there was an element that voted for Barack Obama because they thought he would make massive change. There is an element of dissatisfaction in this country with the way that the country is run. And they want somebody to grab the wheel and turn it in a radical direction. That is an element of electoral politics.
Yeah. And I think we're about to find out what it looks like when you have a government that is ineffective because it's been so shrunk.
Maybe.
I think we're about to find out, and I think it's going to be dangerous.
Heaton?
Can I just clarify for like terminological purposes so that we're not cross-arguing? In terms of like zoning, I want there to be laws that are for public safety purposes, negative externalities like pollution, noise, that kind of thing density stuff, things like that. Those shouldn't be there. Like I would get rid of those. To me, that's saying let's slim down to a smaller amount of laws. But you would not view that as slimming down regulations or limiting government. You would just view that as change.
Andrew, you had me at I want laws. Here's the thing. I would absolutely love for someone like you to be in charge right now, because I do think that you would be careful. I don't think you're someone who wants to slash and burn the government. I just think that sometimes in rhetoric, there's an anti-government thing that happens with you. But I also know that when it comes to policy, I know for a fact that you would be so much more careful. Like I would absolutely love for you to be in charge of Doge if Doge was a real thing. Like, because I think that you think about these things carefully. I don't think you would just be slashing and burning and like ruining people's lives like this. Like there's just no way that I don't think this is a you thing. But for 40 years, this is more of a broad point that I'm trying to make. For 40 years, I've been hearing government is bad. Government is too big. And it's so simple that people think, okay, burn the government down. That's the solution. And I think the simpletons have voted in an administration that's doing it. And I think there's going to be negative repercussions, which we're already seeing. We've already seen people laid off that absolutely should not have been laid off, and they're retracting it. So that's why I think this is dangerous. And but I'm not saying that like you are this.
I appreciate that very much. To just to cover the bases, though, is big business bad? Like, would we want to shrink big business in general?
This is not the simple, like this. We get in trouble when we make it this simplistic.
Good. No, I want to make sure that, yeah.
What I think big business is the structure of a big business looks a lot like tyranny to me, because you have the person at the top, you have the president, the CEO that tells everyone below them what they have to do. If you're at the bottom of the totem pole, you're told where you have to be and when. Your livelihood depends on them. In a lot of ways, your health care depends on them. But where we get our freedom is outside of that structure. I don't want that structure to be our government. So what I want is our government to police that structure. So we don't go back to a place where someone is so dependent on their employer that they end up living in company towns. And if they lose their job, they lose absolutely everything. Like, I think corporate power has gotten so big and so many of these companies are multinational that the only power we have to police them is government. So it's not a good or bad thing. It's who can keep this power in check.
It's not that business is bad. It's not that corporations are bad. It's not that large corporations are bad. You don't want to just shrink the size of corporations. I'm clarifying, correct? Good.
Correct. I want a check and balance. And I think what happens when you destroy your government is there is no check. And so the corporations can run unchecked. And I think there's consequences for those of us that consume their products. There's consequences for those of us who make those products. I think government is the check on corporate power.
So Heaton would be good at running Doge. What about me, Jen?
Oh, God, no. I don't trust you at all.
Why? Why am I untrustworthy?
Why?
Little old me?
You know what? You would be trolling the world just the way Elon is. Like, you would be going on Twitter and poking at everyone the way that you poke at Andrew and I.
Only if they were saying dumb shit.
See?
Patreon.com/we're not wrong. That's where you get the bonus episode and 2 Trump topics this week. If you're like, you're not covering the Trump stuff. There's a fucking. If you're like that. Please give me your money.
Have we been getting those emails?
For saying that. No, not really.
Okay.
We haven't really been getting. It's more of a general thing that I feel like there's like a general question. We're kind of back to this thing that happened in like 2017, where I think every podcast on some level became a politics podcast. And people are like, all right, we're not doing that again, where every fucking podcast has to talk about Trump for 20 minutes. So now there's like some people who really want that. They're like, oh, good. The good old days are back. We're just going to talk about Trump all the time. And so now there's a little bit. But anyway, we're doing 2 Trump topics. And this one, I think, is a heady one that is interesting. Donald Trump saying that he is going to institute the gold card, not the green card, the gold card. You, foreign national, can have unrestricted access to the American workplace if only you give us $5 million. That is on our Patreon exclusive episode. Patreon.com/we're not wrong. Pope Francis remains in critical but stable condition in the Vatican with no acute respiratory distress and stable vital signs as we record this on Wednesday. A scheduled CT scan was conducted to monitor his bilateral pneumonia. He resumed work activities after receiving the Eucharist over the weekend. He's been hospitalized since Valentine's Day for bronchitis and is also being treated for mild renal insufficiency. Recent updates do indicate a slight improvement with no asthma-like distress and better lab results. Mr. Heaton, as we contemplate the idea of a possible death and replacement of the Pope, I ask you in the year of our Lord 2025, how important is the papal see in our modern world?
I'm going to get to that in a second. Hey, Jen, can you ask me if I think the Pope's a good guy?
Do you think the Pope is a good guy?
Thank you for asking, Jen. I do think he's a good guy. I think that the Pope is a really like a laudably humble man. He carries his own bags. He doesn't stay in the palace. He stays in the Vatican guest room. I think he's probably a really good pontiff and really good spiritual leader. He's what, if I were Catholic, he is what I would look for in a father figure of theology. Justin, ask me what your question was again.
How important is the Pope in the modern world?
Not very, thank God. I don't think that it was very positive when the Pope had a lot of importance and power. And I wouldn't want the Pope to have a lot more importance and power than he does. I like him in terms of his like interpersonal morality. I think he's really, really good on being able to help people and respect other people. I think all of that's great. When he starts talking about things at the global level, I am very glad he's not very important. Like small thing like birth control. I'm sure that there is great reasons, great theological reasons that people could come up with that birth control is immoral. I think that that's been disastrous for a number of developing countries. I don't want the Pope to be important on that one. And then more importantly, like when he starts talking about economics, which he does periodically, I think he is heralding from an ancient kind of dark age economic position, which is to understand economics as a product of sin, as a kind of moral intuition that prices go up because of greed. And if we can suppress greed, then everything will be fixed, and doesn't look at why poverty's been alleviated by 80% since he was born. Doesn't seem to be particularly curious about it or interested in it. So I'm glad he's not particularly important, because I don't think that it would actually be good if he had a lot of sway globally.
Jen, how powerful is the Pope?
So I used to think he was pretty important. I was raised Catholic. My parents were never
answered to him.
No, we didn't. We weren't that kind of house. But Joe's grandmother actually was. When she died, we went through her stuff, because we had to decide what to keep and what to go. And a lot of the stuff we kept was her Pope memorabilia. Like she had pictures of the Pope.
John Paul.
There was a Polish Pope.
Yeah.
And she loved the Polish Pope. So she had framed pictures of the Polish Pope, which we then would hang in in each other's houses. Just so like you'd be on a work call and you look behind me and like, oh God damn it, there's the Pope.
There's the Pope.
So we had a lot of fun with the Pope, but she really cared what the Pope thought. And I think my grandparents really cared what the Pope thought, but it's really been the last year and a half that I've saw how much his opinion has seemed to not matter anymore, because he came out against what was happening in Gaza, Israel bombing the shit out of Gaza. And the Christians that support Israel taking all of that land, they didn't seem to give a single shit. So there just didn't seem to be any movement in polling after he made those comments. And, as Andrew said, the birth control stuff, obviously the world has plenty of birth control.
Those are kind of two different things. I mean, birth control and abortion and stuff, that's kind of written in. I don't think that you can get the job without agreeing to those things. This Pope has been a little bit more active in the kind of affairs of man, as it were, like what you are pointing out.
But it hasn't made a dent.
No. And if anything, it has kind of made him more of an almost controversial figure, because oftentimes popes are sort of above it. And he has touched
think that's
modern issues
where he should have stayed. Like I've not read through the entirety of the Evangelii Gaudium, but like he released an economic encyclical, it's not an economic, it has economics in it. And it's like, oh, I don't think he's ever studied any of this. I don't think he knows anything about it. He's just going off of gut and Catholic teaching.
God.
He talks to God, right?
Oh, and I'm so sorry. God hasn't read Hayek. Boo.
Yeah. God, if that is the case, is not doing a good job of alleviating poverty, and neither is the Pope. So I don't like it when he weighs in on statecraft. I do not think he's equipped for it. And in the same way that I think that this is just a kind of a problem in general. If Einstein's really, really good at physics, he might know nothing about medicine. Like, it doesn't follow that because you're really good at something that you're good at everything, or that because you were educated in theology that you're educated in like development in the developing world. And I don't think the Pope knows that stuff, but he likes to talk about it. And I think he would be counterproductive and hurtful to global poverty if he were taken more seriously on that front.
I mean, fine on economics, but I do think the Pope would have a role when it comes to morality. So when he did speak out against the mass slaughter of people in a 2-mile wide strip of land who could not leave, I think that does make sense, where he says this is something that goes against God's teachings. This should stop. Like, that makes sense to me, that that's something he would speak upon. He also talked about the genocide in Sudan. Like, it wasn't just Gaza, but I don't see his words having any effect in the real world, even though here in the United States, we have so many people that are religious of the Jesus variety. And it's
Catholic. We can say Christian. Christian doesn't really mean a whole lot when we're talking about the Pope.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are
a
lot of things there are a lot of elements of Christianity, quote unquote, a monotheistic New Testament religion that have no allegiance and are specifically opposed to the papal see running out of the Vatican. It is Catholic specifically. And even then you get a little fractury because this is a Jesuit Pope. There are many different versions of Catholicism. The Jesuits are probably the more liberal or left leaning of that variety.
They get drunk.
They do. They do.
They party.
They do. I think that this is, I know a little bit about his election, and it was controversial because nobody really thought that there would ever be a Jesuit Pope because the Jesuits are the largest order. And so
I think technically they're forbidden from that too, right? Like I'm really getting into the weeds here, but
they had
there was some
agreed
sort
to
of
not take it, and then they wound up taking it. And so the thought was, if there was ever a Jesuit Pope, there would never not be a Jesuit Pope because they have the largest voting bloc, essentially. But that this was possibly needed because there was so much corruption within the Catholic Church, and there needed to be somebody that was a new voice that wasn't from some of the old groups. I do not know enough past like the first moments of why he was ascendant to know whether or not he was effective. I am not Catholic, so I don't know the internal politics on whether or not he has been well received amongst Catholics, to your point, or whether or not he retains moral authority in those circles. But yeah, I stayed in the Vatican. I drank a liter of beer there.
What do you mean you stayed in the Vatican?
I slept there. Slept in the Vatican.
What does that mean? Like, where?
In the city of the Vatican.
Oh, okay. Well, when you say you stayed in the Vatican,
like
it's like a building.
No,
like, did you have a blanket on the ground?
It was in the Jesuit quarters of the Vatican.
Did you climb to the top of it?
We were on the top of the Jesuit building.
So no.
And so we had a great view of St. Peter's Basilica.
Because I went to the top of St. Peter's.
Of St. Peter's Basilica.
There's a lot of stairs.
It's not a fucking contest. I mean, geez.
It is, and I win. I did more stairs than you. I can pretty much guarantee.
No, I did not go into St. Peter's Basilica. We did the art collection of the Vatican, which is insane. Turns out they got a lot of art.
Hey, Justin, one of the things that I think has been kind of interesting with this particular Pope is that there have been times where he's become a kind of political football for people that aren't Catholic.
Yeah.
So, for example, there was a lot of talk about the Vatican softening its position on homosexuality. Now,
yes.
I'm very, very pro-gay, by the way. I was recently described as the gayest straight man on 3 continents. I sing karaoke at a gay bar every week. The second they make a pill, I'll be devouring.
No, you are, again, you are such gay bait. You're a hate crime. I would outlaw
exactly.
you.
I think my
discriminatory.
My gay bona fides
vows.
are correct here, are sufficient here. Yay! I would love it if he did that. But I looking into that, even just skin deep. It was like what he was saying was what the Catholics have always said, which is love the sinner, hate the sin. Like he didn't say it's not sinful to homosexuality is not sinful. He didn't say that. He didn't what he said was we have to respect and love everybody, and that includes gay people, and like all good stuff. But it wasn't like actually any theological break with anybody else of the last 400 years, but it became a kind of political football where people like me could go like, look, the Pope agrees with us. And it's like, you're kind of, you're sort of pulling this in a more than you should.
Yeah. Again, I am not a religious man and I'm certainly not a Catholic, but I don't know what you would want out of a Pope beyond a commitment and model to your worship. And so I do think that when you freelance more into the corporeal world and not and don't remove yourself as this kind of semi-ethereal figure, then you are just going to get more controversial. Like you're going to make a decision, you're going to say something that are going to piss people off, which makes them less likely to look at you as if you are a divine representation of God. And that is what the role of the Pope, I think, symbolically is supposed to be. I would assume so. Catholics write in. But I don't know why you would want to have a head of a religion that isn't an avatar in and of themselves for that religion.
Yeah, well, like historically, the Pope went from being the head of a persecuted sect where the Pope was very much a spiritual leader to the implosion of the Roman Empire where the whole government collapsed. And the only person that was there that could, I guess somebody's got to deliver the mail. I guess it's me, the Pope. So the Pope kind of stepped in and became a political authority. And then that kind of went on for a couple thousand years where the Pope was a temporal authority, and it never worked well for the benefit of the Catholic Church. In terms of spirituality, it never worked. It worked great in terms of acquiring money and being able to get indulgences to build St. Peter's Basilica. But I don't think it's ever been positive for the faith in terms of spiritual or morality to have the spiritual leaders also have a hand in temporal governmental affairs. Yeah. And it's I think a very positive direction for the papacy to concern itself just with spiritual things, or up until this Pope anyway. I think generally, I don't disagree, by the way, Jen, with like things that are like just moral issues. I think that is a very legitimate place for the Pope to intervene. I don't disagree on that. But like, I don't want like the Pope weighing in on like food dye, whether it should be legal or not, or like stuff that requires technical expertise in governmental policy. I don't want the Pope weighing in.
Mel Gibson doesn't like him.
Okay. That's someone we should listen to.
Yeah, well, isn't Mel Gibson like one of those, what do they call them?
I listened. Did you hear him on Rogan?
He's an evangelical, I think.
No, he's Catholic.
No.
He's
like
very Catholic.
There's a sect of Catholicism that's like kind of a breakaway, maybe heretical sect that's like the Pope's not Catholic enough. And like either
he might
that
be
or
a heretic himself, and there has been a line of heretics that have in
something like that. Yeah. And I don't know that he's formally in that, but his dad is, and he's built them a church, so he's like cozy with them.
He's of the sect that believes that thou shalt call cops sugar tits.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a holy
the Benedictines.
Phrase. Yeah.
Did you hear him on the most recent time that he was on Rogan?
No.
I have not listened. I'm not a regular Rogan listener, but periodically when there's somebody that I want to listen to in a long form conversation, and Mel Gibson, say what you will, is one of the unique American artists of his time. I certainly don't agree with everything that he has done or said in his personal life, especially that which has been caught on tape and laundered out to the world. But he's an insane writer and director. And I mean that in both ways, in terms of quality and in personal temperament. Apparently he has already written and wants to go into production over the next year, a sequel to The Passion of the Christ that deals with Christ in like limbo between heaven and hell.
Oh God.
And I'm like,
Wow.
day one, I'm into this like Avatar. Like I am all in.
I went to the Passion of the Christ when I was in college with my buddy McGee, from a friend of mine from high school. And as the lights were going down, McGee very loudly went, "What's this about?" Which I still think was one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
That Rogan appearance. I only know of it because while he was on the show, his house burned down in Malibu.
Yes, in Malibu. And he was talking about whether or not he was going to have a house.
Well, he has multiple houses
Sure.
in Malibu. That
Whether or
part he
not-
skipped, but that house, he was
Whether
like,
or not-
I don't know. And then he came out and was like, yep, it's gone. Which is, I mean, it's a bummer.
It's sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he was
In Moon Shadows, actually, that's the Sugar Tits restaurant. That burned down that day too.
That's where he got busted.
He was leaving Moon Shower.
he
So
was
that's where
drunk.
he got drunk there with a bunch of tourists apparently, and then got in his car and was driving.
He
and
is
that's when
sober
got pulled
now.
over.
He talked about how he was not able to handle his liquor. And we're like, we know, Mel.
Yeah.
We're aware.
We got the memo.
We're aware. You and booze do not mix.
Yep.
You, booze, and tape recorders do not mix.
Moon Shadows, every time I drove to my sister's house, every time I drove by it, Sugar Tits. It was the only thing I could
Sugar
think for
tits.
like 20 years.
It's a good line.
It's
It's
funny.
a memorable line.
Yeah.
Like
It's-
that's the problem, is that he's a good enough writer is that when he was screaming and yelling on taped recording, you're like, yeah, you want to know what? You write good dialogue.
Yeah.
You write good dialogue at all times.
it's entertaining.
We're not wrong pod@gmail.com. That is where you can write the show, including you, Mel. Go ahead and send us an email. We're not wrong pod@gmail.com. Release the Uber passenger rating, you coward. Just wrote that. Released your Uber passenger rating, assuming that I'm a bad Uber client, like these two fucking animals accused me of without evidence last week. And I have published it here. I am a 4.91.
Yeah. Because in that Uber, Andrew had called the Uber. So it was his account that got dinged, and it was he that wasn't able to get picked up by that guy.
We
because
don't
of you.
know whether or not that was because of anything that happened. We
I
have
feel
no-
comfortable surmising
Of course you do.
that he hates you.
Oh, stop. Stop.
Andrew, what's your Uber rating?
Mine is a 4.89, which means
Oh,
You
you're a
did.
shittier
Justin
Uber
is a
client
better
than I
human
am.
being than
Because
me. I am
of
a
you.
worse.
Bullshit. That is statistically insignificant.
You hurt Andrew's Uber rating, and I think you should apologize.
No, you should apologize for this kind of slander. Go ahead and look yours up. Sugar tits.
I know it's worse than a 4.9. I have no doubt.
Here we go. Oh, the sweet Schadenfreude when I'm king of Uber Mountain.
Yeah, you'll misbehave when it's on other people's accounts.
I wasn't misbehaving.
Yes, you were.
I was having a conversation with my friends that my friends then assumed this Uber driver was the victim of and made a gigantic mountain out of a molehill.
As if this poor man wasn't in the car with us.
It
and
would
couldn't
have
hear
just been
every
a
word.
conversation about a futuristic world we live in. I could have just been a shiny 1950s futurist looking into a gleaming sunset. But no, you had to make me the villain. What is it?
4.88.
Oh! Vindicated
I wish
yet again.
they'd tell you what the dings are for. I don't know what the dings are for. I'd like to know.
Well, fucking
know.
stewing it. Me and my 4.91, we sleep soundly every night. I expect better of Jen, writes, unless Heaton is eating fertilized chicken eggs, he's not eating chicken abortions, he's eating their periods.
I stand corrected.
How?
thanks. Yep.
Writes, wait, as a recently minted girl dad myself, I want to know how the fuck Justin is going to bars. I haven't been to a bar since my daughter was 8 months old. What the fuck am I doing wrong? I've also lost 17 pounds since becoming a dad with no more alcohol and barely finding time to eat. I don't know, man. It doesn't seem so hard to me.
You seem
Yeah,
like
you
you've
got
lost
to
weight.
prioritize, buddy.
No,
you
I
got to
gained.
prioritize.
I have gained weight.
You're hiding it well.
But yeah, I think the biggest thing is that we have thankfully been blessed with a very good sleeper by and large. And so that anytime that you have that stability, it maintains order, which means things are understandable, which means that there's a little bit less on hand. But yeah, my wife does D&D on Mondays. I agree to be solo ward of the child on Mondays. And then on Wednesdays, I like to go hang out with our friend Darren Kitchen. And that's when Ashley looks after the kid for a couple hours. So that's.
Yeah. And since Bella was born, I saw you in a bar once.
Yes.
And I think you stayed for like an hour.
Yes. And that was fairly early on. That was like, I think the first time that I had left the house.
It was
for
Andrew's
Heaton's
goodbye
going away
party, which I think was the only reason you went.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's not doing his
like
old
out
ways.
At bars.
No.
I will say that also the other stuff that has really gone away was like 3 days a week. I was going on like 5 mile plus walks. Those have kind of gone away. Like
even
now,
your Friday walks?
Friday, if I go, I will go far later into the evening. So it'll be like when she's either down or about to be down. And then I will do like a 10-mile walk. But before I would go at like 4 and I would come back at like 7. And now if I leave, I'm gone at like 8 and I'm back at like, 11, 12, something like that. So it has shifted that. But now I don't do it on Thursdays. I don't do it on Sundays. I used to do those as well. But, it's, but anyway, I don't know. Get on my level, dog. Fuck Kaiser writes, Kaiser's the Planet Fitness of health insurance. It's for people exactly like Justin and Heaton who take their medical care in a very passive way. Go in once a year, get a physical, get some blood, see you next year. It's a system of vertical integration is horrible for people like myself who have medical conditions that require access to specific specialists that don't work with them because they will only work with doctors and hospitals that they can own outright. If you want to praise the Planet Fitness of health insurance because it works for you, great. But stop saying our overall system should be more like it. It's actively harmful to those of us that need access to care that it denies us because they don't own those specialists. And I speak from experience as I've been forced onto Kaiser this year because it's all I could afford on an ACA plan.
Yeah, maybe, man. I don't know. I've only been on it for 2 months. Like I'm trying it out. Like I've heard interesting things about it. I'll say the bit that I don't like is I want to go get an annual screening for skin. See if I've got skin cancer like Jen Briney, because I play volleyball a lot too. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, how do I do this? And they're like, well, send us pictures of your skin. And I was like, no, I just want to get a general screening. And they're like, no, you got to do this. And I was like, to be clear on this, I need your permission to book a dermatologist. And they're like, yes, you need a referral for. And like immediately my inner Ron Swanson was like, fuck you. I'm giving you money. Take my money. Let's stop this paternalistic bullshit. So entirely possible I'll wind up where you are. Can
you not do that through the app? That was the thing that I actually thought that their app was pretty robust. That
but you take pictures of your skin. Like, how are you supposed to take pictures of that mole you don't know about in like the back of your head? That's insane.
Yeah, listener, on my end, I don't know that I want the country to resemble Kaiser. Like we kind of talked about this previously. What I want is 2 verticals. I want there to be federal clinics that provide a safety net for people that can't afford stuff, and I want everything else to be a lot more deregulated and uncoupled from insurance. So, in the Heaton system, you would go into that wild west. Doctor charges you a subscription, and we don't get the insurance model or the insurance company involved in it, and maybe that would be better.
A Maryland driver writes, fuck off.
Sounds like a Maryland driver.
Just that it. Just like
hey,
that.
I'm really impressed that you were able to text that while driving, you fuck.
Babe, wake up. New WNR alignment just dropped, writes. Andrew, as the moderate, I'm going to have to strike a balance. Justin, what does that make me? Justin, that was a quote from our last episode. Justin, you're now the closest thing to a MAGA surrogate on the podcast. Not fully, but as an agent of chaos, you're closer to current MAGA policy. Heaton is closer to the wounded neoliberal neocon wishing for some kind of order. Jen is the left populist desperate for her shot to overturn the classical democratic brand for something that the people want. Justin, I'm sorry. You are Pax MAGA. Might makes right. Nothing matters except getting people to push the button on voting every day. Embrace your dark destiny. Maybe I will.
The accuracy of this bothers me.
I know, me too.
This cuts to the
They
bone.
nailed it.
Yes.
They did.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question though?
Yeah.
You write the headlines,
Yeah.
right? WNR.
Have you not seen that?
So many people abbreviate it WNR.
WNR.
Guys, wrong.
No.
Starts with a W.
No. You want to know what? When the crowd wants it, the crowd needs it.
Did you do that on purpose, or are you one of them? Did you know it was going to make me nuts?
Oh, is that what that was?
I didn't know it was going to make you nuts, but it drove me nuts. And then eventually I just had to submit to the insanity.
It happens so often.
Because people love doing it.
But I think
hardcore fans love doing it, which means we have to embrace it. You can't go against it.
But it was organic, which makes me think that people hear We're Not Wrong and genuinely think it's an R. Because I think this might be the first time we've ever mentioned it on air.
I think it has, yeah.
Yeah, it's a thing.
I wanted to mention it just to give it a little hat tip. I didn't know that we were going to get into a conversation about it, but it used to drive me up a fucking wall. And now I'm just like, I finally learned to love Big Brother. You are all WNR fans. Enjoy WNR. We will continue making WNR for you.
Oh, man.
Parenting fail writes, I was driving to pick up my son from daycare listening to We're Not Wrong. My car turns off and the podcast stops. Get in the car with my son, and of course the podcast resumes from where it left off, and Andrew immediately says the word fuck. I'm like, okay, he rarely swears. Maybe I can keep listening. Then Andrew says it another time in rapid succession, but louder. I immediately hear from the back seat, fuck. My 2-year-old has learned a bad word. I immediately think of my wife's reaction and I say, shit, loudly. Then I hear from the back seat, shit. He had added to his vocabulary. What a smart boy. Thankfully, he did not keep saying the bad words and I forgot about this story. Then I get in the car this morning on my way back from the gym and see there's a new We're Not Wrong. Yay. I play it for 10 minutes and get into the Eric Adams part on the way home to stop to go inside and make breakfast for my son. I get him ready for school, put him in the car, start the engine, and before I can turn off the podcast, which is again started automatically, I hear Andrew say, fuck. And immediately from the back seat, I hear the word fuck, which my 2-year-old has gleefully repeated the entire way to school and the entire way through the school hallways as I carry him to the classroom. Parenting fail. Fuck.
Well
so
done,
two
Andrew.
things. First, this would be even better if this were your child's first word. I would really enjoy that. I feel like that'd be something I would get framed. But this is what I want to tell you, though. If you're listening to this in the car with kids, I want you to be really careful because somebody from Maryland is apparently on the road and texting us and probably eating a crab. So just keep your eyes posted.
Anonymous Hill staffer says, like Jen said, when in doubt, make the call to your local representative, even if they are deep MAGA. What absolutely does not matter is calling somebody who isn't your representative. You will be disregarded instantly. Seriously, just never do it. If you want a meaningful response, ask for the email of the policy staffer for the member of Congress for your specific issue area that you care about and ask to set up a meeting. You would be amazed by what could happen. Also, if your representative is deep MAGA, there will probably be at least one senator of yours that is not. And you will almost certainly find a more sympathetic voice from that upper chamber, even in states as red as Oklahoma, where Langford is hated by MAGA. And I will say again, we know who this is.
Okay.
They know. This is not talking out of their butt. And I think it's really, really good input, especially for the more thoughtful elements of our audience that, ask for the legislative aid and ask where they are legislatively on some of these issues. I think you could actually have real policy implications because those are the people that are actually writing this kind of stuff up.
Policy implications, especially if you have information that you're not sure that they have.
Yeah.
I've found that staffers I've found them, everyone that I've met to be smart and engaged and just good people, but you don't know what you don't know. So if you have an expertise in an issue, share it with the staffer because most of the time it's not your member of Congress that's writing the bill. It's their staff that's writing the bill. So make sure, even if you think, they should know this, they don't always. So it makes sense to just communicate when in doubt.
By the way, Jen, what about that chaos Congress, getting their shit together last night?
Okay, so we're in February. This is the dumbest part of the year that pisses me off every single time. We are now getting all of this information. Oh my God, I fucking hate February because that's when they do the budget outlines. These have no details whatsoever. So when you see people throwing around numbers, like the Democrats have been very big on, they're cutting $880 billion from Medicaid. Like there's no details. All they're basically doing is giving instructions to the committees to eventually form the actual budget. So it's like, if anyone's giving you details, except for the broad outlines that Massey was giving yesterday, Tom Massey is the only Republican who seems to have, I don't know, principles.
He's the only one who voted no.
He seems to be the only one that's aware that the debt is subject to math. The other Republicans don't seem to think that math and debt are correlated.
In all honesty, that is something that I've heard from inside Congress, is that especially on the Republican side, they do not agree on what math is.
Yeah.
There are some that believe the Congressional Budget Office. There are some that believe that the Congressional Budget Office is woefully inaccurate, and they will say that they had scored the Trump tax cuts as a money loser, and it has increased revenue, or they've increased revenue since, and so they don't believe it. They don't believe that that making the Trump tax cuts permanent represents a loss in revenue, because we have been operating at that revenue number before. So there is a big philosophical difference in what math is, and Thomas Massey is on the other side of it.
When I worked there, I liked the CBO. I liked the CRS. That it's fair. They're a human institution like any other institution, so it's possible that they get things wrong. That's fine. The issue that I'm seeing from Republicans in terms of debt is that the Republicans are basically saying we can grow our way out of this without having to actually raise any taxes. We'll cut spending. Good. I'm in favor of that. We won't raise taxes. In fact, we're going to give tax breaks. But the growth that we're going to have is going to more than compensate for the tax breaks. And when you actually nail into that based on any reasonable estimate over how tax breaks have worked over the last 50 years, you're going to need to have year over year 3% GDP growth. Usually we get like 1.7 to 2%. So we have to have a significant amount more growth every single year for 20 years. It's just not going to happen unless there's some massive game changing thing where AI truly does just double efficiency annually. It's not going to happen. And then when you start bringing this up, they go, well, I believe in America. And you're like, well, I wish that believing in America included believing in fucking math, because what you're basically saying is, I don't want to deal with the reality of this, and I don't want to have to actually have tax increases. I'm worried about this. I want to have spending cuts and tax increases, because the debt's going to be a fucking horrible thing in probably 20 to 30 years. I'm going to be retired living in an Airstream. Like, Bella's going to have a shit time. We need to look out for her, and it's going to involve like making tough choices. This is one of my other issues with Doge is like they're trying to cut like a quarter of government spending, but they're not going to cut anything involving entitlements or defense. Well, how are you going to do that?
Well, they say that they are going into the Pentagon. So, I mean, I think
good. I hope that they do, but they're going to need to go into entitlements too.
That's one of the things that actually fucking annoys me from the libertarian perspective of the people with Doge, where it's like, I've read my entire fucking life in the pages of Reason specifically, the idea of radical change to the federal overhead in a way that I would think there would at least be one of the major voices out of that institution that would at least be a little horny for what is happening. And there is nothing. It is only this pedantic, well, yes, but you should there, maybe, but you should also do X, Y, and Z when it's a month in. And like, I don't know, there should be a libertarian voice that's like fucking like the sickos meme, like, ha, 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 yes. There should be something, at least from that institution of all places. There's plenty of places, the places where Jen reads and talks about, yes, they should be like, this is a slash and burn. This is a demonization of government for all the wrong reasons. Not the fucking libertarian people who have only talked about federal overhead and government spending. And then it's like a month in, it's like, well, but you didn't balance the budget at the Pentagon yet. It's like, what kind of scold bullshit is that?
I think they just know how government works and know that Doge has no authority to tell the Pentagon to do fucking anything. So that might be a part of it. But let me just get back to like what we're seeing right now with this budget bill, because the news today had my head exploding. So like Tom Massey, the only numbers you can trust on these are the big numbers. So it's like, yes, those are the ones where he saw the GOP's own talking points and he looked at them and he said, you're going to explode the debt. I can't vote for this. He voted no. The rest of them voted yes. But what they voted yes on was guidelines, very broad guidelines. The details have not been worked out yet. So anyone throwing numbers around is just guessing. And there's the fact that the House did one set of guidelines, the Senate did a different set of guidelines, and so they still have to merge those. Yeah, so even the fucking guidelines aren't done. So right now you're hearing all of this news about the Republicans passed the budget, and like people have no idea what that means. They really passed nothing significant yesterday politically. This is why Justin would get excited. Politically, Mike Johnson, the speaker, was able to wrangle up everyone except for Massey to get them to vote on a thing.
Which I did not think was possible.
And that's why this is interesting.
Yes.
The thing they passed itself, not that interesting at this point. And yet the news is going to make you think that a thing was actually passed that mattered
Democrats
yesterday.
are going to run on it because that's the Medicaid thing. And that, to me, Doge is not a winner for them. Like there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of excitement for it right now. I don't think that it's going to be a winner in the midterms. God knows whether or not Elon's even like involved in the government by the time that the midterms come around, right? Donald Trump could be yelling and screaming about how Elon Musk is a total piece of shit and should never be near the White House ever again. And he ruined everything and we hate him.
It's just a matter of time.
We have no idea what that is going to be at that time. Democrats saying Republicans are giving your Medicaid money to their rich friends. That's a song that's been sung very, very, well by Democrats for a very long time. That is something that has more of an enduring message.
But here's the problem with the Democrats doing that right now. It's the same problem they've always had. Because people like me who know things look at this and go, you're quoting numbers of Medicaid cuts that aren't real. It puts everything they say into doubt. So if you're going to do this, wait until the cuts are actually written in some kind of legislation and you're not just guessing because of what committee was assigned.
But they have nothing else.
The lying doesn't help.
Yeah, I would agree. But that hasn't stopped them from holding super embarrassing gang press conferences every fucking day and just showing their ass every news cycle. Let's get into Mayor Adams. Small but mighty writes, how did nobody talk about all the Adams stuff and not point out when Justin argued that bribes were small? That makes it worse. At least if it were hundreds and thousands of dollars, I could make a case about it being too much to turn down. But when you sell out people's safety for hundreds, what would he be willing to do for hundreds of thousands? I think it was tens of thousands ultimately when it all came together. My point was more in the realm of, in the world of campaign donations, we get into a gray area, at least morally, of like, okay, did it come from an American citizen? Legal. Did it come from an American citizen because they believe in a foreign entity? Legal. Did it come from an American citizen who works with a foreign entity, but it comes from a separate bank account? Legal. Did it come from a foreign entity that the money went right from one right hand to the left hand to a politician? Illegal. Like, I don't know. I'm more on Jen's side where it's like, we're really going to get into like, because he didn't deposit the money that he works for into a Bank of America account and then wire transferred it to an ally account before he gave it to Eric Adams, that's going to make the biggest deal in the world. Like, judge him for whatever he did. But the campaign finance thing was not particularly compelling to me. Corrupt writes, from my perspective, it seems like the way the whole political system of the Democratic Party and for part of the Republican Party is that they actively encourage some level of corruption from their members in order to hold them under pressure, to make them vote for things that the leaders of the party want them to do, despite their own personal thoughts and whether or not would be constitutional, ethical, good, or for the benefit of the people. So yeah, I agree. Eric Adams should be held accountable for his corruption. But the way this seems like it's playing out is that the Democratic Party as a whole was totally okay with his corruption as long as he stayed in line with the desires of leadership. And then when he started cooperating with the opposition, they want to hold him accountable.
Hochul kept him in office.
I think that the timeline is on your side, listener. I think the timeline comports with what you're describing.
I think he's more talking about the fact that the charges were brought at all. Whatever. Accurate transcript writes, Jen, let's disregard due process and rule of law in the name of safety and security. When has that ever gone wrong? Andrew, sounds good to me. I guess my principles don't matter when safety's invoked.
I'd like to respond to this, given that I seem to be the one that's being.
I don't know.
attacked
I don't
here.
know if you're allowed to do it, considering
Am
you
I not?
guys have such a non-factual remembering of how I behaved in that
Yeah.
Uber in
So
Milwaukee. But please go ahead.
The thing that Jen swayed me on was that due process is talking about criminal litigation. It's not talking about a political appointment. That the bar for a political appointment can be lower for removal, which could include suspicion, as opposed to like criminalizing somebody. I thought that was a salient point, that you could come up with the best practice of when in doubt, fire them when it comes to politicians. That maybe not, but I could totally see that being a good best practice. That I do think is different than if you were a citizen being prosecuted, which is not what we were talking about.
Perfectly said.
Fuck Adams and writes up front. I've thought Adams was a shady character since he tried to make his completely unqualified brother the chief of police. But here's some quick facts regarding Eric Adams regarding Turkey. He was the Brooklyn borough president from 2013 to 2021. Brooklyn has the largest Turkish American population in the country. And Adams' 7 trips to Turkey were in line with practices by his predecessor, Marty Markowitz, who started making trips to Turkey as borough president in 2009. Both Markowitz and Adams received campaign donations from the owners of KSK Construction, who are Turkish American. Adams' big fat foreign bribe was a whopping $14,000 from those American citizens at KSK. Those donations and Adams' communications with FDNY were from 2021. The federal investigation began in 2023 when he was criticizing the Biden administration. They waited over a year to indict him for this 4-year-old alleged crime until it was close to the election. Like they waited for into the fall of 2023 to start going after Trump for payments he made to a porn star in 2015 or overestimating property values in 2011 to 2015. New York-based prosecutors love influencing elections these days.
Yeah. Kind of sounds like it.
Yeah. I just don't care. That's the thing. Like, he put Americans in danger. I don't care about the political timing. He deserves to be in trouble for it.
For my friends, everything. For my enemies, the law.
I don't think I'm like that.
No, but I think he might be saying the Democrats are.
Oh, well, I'm not a fucking Democrat.
I think you're a 4.81 rating of that person.
4.88, bitch.
And finally, on Adams, Turkish Delight writes, I too have big doubts on how big of a deal ignoring the fire safety is. Regardless of the exchanges, it probably counts as a gratuity, not a bribe under the precedent of Snyder versus the United States. But I do want to bring to your attention another part of this indictment that you might care about. The city of New York runs a donations matching fund that Adams made use of. The Turkish illegal donations were funneled through U.S. citizens, which means that they qualified for the program. And according to the Department of Justice, this allowed Adams to receive he writes 10 million. I think he meant 10,000 of public funds that he could have never legally received if they were foreign donations, defrauding the taxpayers of more money than they will earn in a lifetime. I don't know, 10 million. I don't think is
remember
right.
seeing 10 million.
Yeah. Reuters and AP seem to treat these allegations as credible. I don't think it's 10 million. I think it was 10,000 because the donations were 14.
It was more than 10,000. But I the point that he's making is, like, if we just take the number out of it, reading the indictment, they did talk about the fact that the public matching funds were a part of this.
Yes.
That because of what he took, he was able to get more matching funds than he would have otherwise. So while I'm not sure about that number, the point is correct.
He is, by the way, not eligible for it in his reelection.
I can't believe he's running.
Oh,
What else would he do?
Yeah.
Fucking resign. Have shame.
That's not how
I know what I'm
politicians
saying.
work. That's not how politicians work.
Works
Once
for
they're in there, they
someone.
never, ever quit running
Again,
ever.
he won the mayorship living in Jersey City. He didn't live in the city he was running for mayor in because his girlfriend lives in Jersey City in a bigger apartment. And he was taking pictures of her like fridge and house. Like he wasn't even like shy about it. Of course he's not. He has no shame.
This is why I don't live in New York.
This city on SNL 50. Well, isn't that special, writes? I don't know if I agree with SNL's best era was in high school. I'm 25. My favorite SNL stuff was Dana Carvey, Norm Macdonald, and Dennis Miller, slightly before my high school days. I'm going to get back to that.
I think he's being sarcastic.
Okay. Oh, yeah. No, definitely. It was like 10 years before he was born.
Yeah.
I really do think that SNL has just been awful for many years straight with rare glimpses of goodness that mostly come out of Weekend Update. Credit to you for going back and I don't know how much
this makes me feel much better about the replacement generation, frankly. This makes me feel better about all you Gen Z people.
Yeah.
Did you just call
the ones that are going to push us
replace-
over the edge into death here in a few years. Yeah, this is good.
In a few years.
Wow. That's dark.
There's a thing that was going around the internet last week about, I think we're all in this age cohort. What do you refer to our generation?
We have a few different names because I'm class of 2000. So there's like mini generations right around the millennium.
Yeah, because you're 2000.
Yeah.
I'm 01. And I assume you were 02, Keaton? 03.
03.
Yeah. So I've heard that 99, 2000, and 2001 is its own micro generation.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Because I think we're not Gen X.
No.
And I've never really felt comfortable with the millennial tag because millennials to me are defined by a generation that was raised with ubiquitous internet. And we were raised pre-ubiquitous internet, but then we're young enough.
You were raised analog for sure.
But then we're young enough to be kids when the internet started. So it's like we were on the internet and AIM and things that wound up defining what is now youth. But like Gen Y was a thing for a while. I heard centennial. So not millennial, but
there was
centennial.
a phrase for it. I can't remember the name of it. I've heard exennial, but I don't identify as X at all.
Yeah.
I like centennial. That sounds good because I usually say I usually say I'm an elder millennial, but I think you're right about what you're describing. Like I would say for my friends that are like proper millennials that are clearly within the median bell curve distribution of that age cohort, the defining characteristic is they grew up with social media and the internet. Whereas with my Gen X friends, they got through high school without email. So we're in that phase of like had email, had the internet, didn't have social media. Centennial, I hate Gen Y. I hate it when you take something that somebody else has and go, you're going to be the slightly different version of this thing. No, I will never use that. Centennial, elder millennial works for me.
Yeah. If I say something, I'll say elder millennial, but I don't feel like a millennial either. There's just this uniqueness about those 3 years.
I think baptized by 9/11. That's
I mean, really.
Because that's the other thing.
That's how we became adults.
Yeah. We got kicked out of the old kid bucket real fucking fast. It was just like, oh, 9/11's here. About a quarter of you guys are going to war. The rest of you guys, about a quarter of you guys are going to protest it. And the rest of you are going to be scarred for life because you turned on the television one day when you were fucking 18 and knew what that meant.
But don't worry, as soon as you graduate college as soon as you graduate college in 2007, 2008, it's going to be a great job market. So it'll all be worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like being raised or going through high school in the late 90s, like everything seemed kind of great. Like the biggest political scandal was a blowjob. Like that was kind of fun. And then adulthood hit and it was just a freight train of awful that has not stopped. So I just feel like the future I was promised, I don't know where the hell it is.
I mean, like we're not doing bad here.
We're not, but I was.
We were sitting in my fucking house that I bought on a set broadcasting our thoughts for money.
No, I get that. Like I know everything's fine for me, but as an American, like things were pretty fun. Like I didn't worry about the state of my government ever in the 90s. I was
global poverty was far higher.
I mean, okay, here's a good, you kind of just said it with 9/11. I had friends that signed up for the military because they thought that they would get college paid for and stuff. And then they ended up dying in Iraq and Afghanistan. Like that was not something that was in our crystal ball. Yeah, we just didn't see that as possible. And just like the chaos of all these
George
years.
W. Bush ran as stopping America's role as the world police.
I know. Yeah. I know.
I did a thing, and actually this can kind of feed into the fact that We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio, and our editor is Will Saddleberg. But on PX3 this week, I compared the Tea Party protests of 2009 to the protests that we are seeing now from the Democratic side. What is similar and what is dissimilar?
I don't have any protests now.
Do you not see the Rich McCormick town hall? bunch of screaming, yelling. And, yeah.
Are we calling those a protest?
Well, I mean, similar. So this is where I think that it is and is not similar. Like part of what I think what happened with the Tea Party was that you did have an element of conservatism that did feel neglected and betrayed by Bush.
Yeah.
And that there's only so much you can stand up and say, fuck you to Bush when he's winning 2 terms and you're getting more of what you want than you would otherwise. But there was a fiscal element and a non-interventionalist element that was just kind of ignored. And so that's what channeled into the Tea Party. Then you also have the reaction to Obama and the idea that we're slipping into socialism, whatever you want to, and then sprinkle a little racism in there. We're not going to ignore the racism. There's just a little sprinkle of racism in there.
Our president was the birther guy.
But I mean, and that eventually morphs into MAGA, right? And so it's like now if you're looking at it, the Democrats are certainly in the fucking wilderness. But if you're screaming and yelling about Doge, I don't know if that really taps into like an ancient communal power source for the liberal element of America in the way that like we're spending too much taps into a visceral ancient element of conservatism. And so that's what things that are similar. People are really mad. People are really activated. Is that enough to swing the House to the Democrats? Quite possibly. But the Tea Party didn't topple the head of the Democratic Party. And it took a while for them to find a Donald Trump. So anyway, that's on PX3. I talk about that. Jen.
So the latest congressional dish is about the Lake and Riley Act. I've kind of mentioned it here, but if you want the actual details of it, that is going to be in that episode, because I think this is a law that we're going to regret passing in the same way we regret the Patriot Act. And then the second half of the episode, because what this does is it authorized indefinite detention of people here in the United States, people who are here legally, by the way. Because of that indefinite detention part of it, I did want to look at who benefits from detaining people. And so I looked at not only private prisons themselves, but there's actually a lot of money being made off of prisoners in government prisons. And so we kind of dive down that with some congressional testimony.
Look at that. Heaton.
I have on the great Jeff Maurer, friend of mine, friend of Justin's, former writer from Last Week Tonight, and the author of the very funny I Might Be Wrong Substack. And I put a task before him. I feel like a lot of the time when we're talking about government, we're talking about the old saw of private sector versus public sector. How big should the private sector be versus how big should the public sector be? I'm here for that. That is very frequently what we get into. But on the Political Orphanage this week, that is not the lens with which we are going to look through government. We are going to look at government through the lens of irritation. What is irritating that the government can stop, and what is irritating that the government is currently doing? So we talk about paper straws. I talk about why I think the penny should be abolished at great length. We discuss low-flow toilets and a surprising amount. And then we get into stuff that I would like the government to like step in and stop. So it is a funny episode with a very funny person on the Political Orphanage this week.
Somebody pointed out that one of my favorite things to do is to just send things that Heaton will have to begrudgingly like Trump about. And I had a banger.
The penny's an example. Yeah.
I had a fucking banger this weekend when I sent Heaton a recitation that happened, I think, during the governors, when all the governors were at the White House.
Bit. That rattled the whole like foundations of my world, Justin. I was like, Justin, please explain the scene, and then I'll tell you my reaction to it.
One of the military choruses, I don't know which one, came out and did One More Day from
One Day More.
Or
One
Day More. Now we can tell who the theater kid is.
So
from Les Mis. And I just was like, okay, Heaton's got to see this. Heaton's got to see it. So it hit your phone, and then what?
I watched. Now, I think that they were doing a parody. I don't believe those were the lyrics. I think they'd redone the lyrics to something fitting the MAGA anthem. But nonetheless, it was very distinctly One Day More from Les Mis. Yeah. So they've got I think it was like the Governors Association was meeting in the White House. And then these wonderful singers come in and just do One Day More. And I was like, God damn it, if I were in the room, I'd probably put a red hat on. Like, as much as I despise Donald Trump, by the end of it, I'd be like, damn it. And I'd have to put it on. It was very disturbing to my worldview of like, wait, they do musicals now? Now they're the musical guys?
Yeah, musicals are great, actually. That's what MAGA stands for.
Yes, clearly.
All right. That'll wrap it up for us today. For Jen Briney and Andrew Heaton, I'm Justin Robert Young, reminding you that we're not wrong. Eric Adams's Turkish bribes are.